Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you would like to join us, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, thank you all for coming. We have kind of a full agenda today, so we'll hopefully go through it as quickly as we possibly can. First item on our agenda is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. The next item is the consent agenda. These are all action items, and items on the consent agenda are to be considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All of these items are action items unless noted. Is there anyone who wishes to pull anything off of the consent agenda?
Madam President, I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, this brings us to our regular agenda items. These are all action items. First is the contractor's yard request for approval waiver of policy. We'll have a staff report from Christy Little, and then we will hear from the applicant if they are here, and then testimony if there is any. So, Christy?
Thank you, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Christy Little, Development Services. This is a conditional use and master site plan for a contractor's yard. The applicant has been operating out of this location without the necessary permits from the county for a while now, and so they were able to get in front of Development Services and get the appropriate permits in place. So just for clarification, and I'll go into this in a little more detail, the county has approved this application, so we're just focusing on roadway improvements with our action. So they do operate two separate businesses out of this location. The first is TJ Construction, and they're more of a heavy equipment construction company. They do large jobs, gas pipelines, a lot of work out of state, and so they are not coming back and forth to the site with their heavy equipment every day, but they have dump trucks and backhoes and large equipment associated with that business. And the other business is Promo Lawn Care, and they also store their trucks and equipment on site for use by their employees on a daily basis when they're in operation. So this is a 5-acre site in total for the parcel, located at the southwest corner of Lamont and 10 Mile. Lamont is located south of Overland Road. It's a collector. It's a mile long, and it runs between 10 Mile and Black Cat. The site is zoned RUT, which is Rural Urban Transition in the county, and is in the City of Meridian's area of impact. The City of Meridian's comprehensive plan designates this area as low-density residential. So Ada County Planning and Zoning Commission did approve this application on November 15th. I wanted to just give you some of their findings regarding the land use. So the future land use map designates the property as low-density residential, which is envisioned for residential uses on large lots where urban services are provided with a gross density of 3 dwelling units or less per acre. They found that although a contractor's yard is more industrial in nature, it is limited in its duration in the RUT district, and a contractor's yard can only be approved in 5-year increments in that district. In addition, they noted that the surrounding parcels were generally 5 acres in size. This is the site plan that was submitted with the application, but I'm going to take you back to an aerial and kind of orient you here. So this entire square is 5 acres and is all one parcel. This area shaded in yellow is the part being used for the conditional use and master site plan application and contractor's yard. The existing residence is here directly at the corner. There is a garage associated with the residence that happens, and the parking occurs in front of the garage. There is a driveway on 10 Mile Road, which is used only for the residents, and there is a shared driveway on Lamont, which is used by both the contractor's yard employees and the residents. There are no structures or office space associated with this application. It is just employee parking and equipment parking. As noted in the staff report, trip generation for contractor yards it's difficult to establish a trip generation rate for this application. Trip generation rates will also vary for this site due to the seasonal nature of the businesses. But the for example, when considering trip generation, is any vehicle entering the site is counted as one trip, vehicle exiting the site is counted as another. So if an employee were coming to work to pick up a vehicle, that would be one trip. When they leave the site, that would be another trip. When they come back at the end of the day to park the equipment, that would be one trip. And when they leave, that would be another trip. So the applicant does have 440 feet of frontage on 10 Mile Road, but again, no frontage specific for the contractor's yard. So there's 10 Mile is a principal arterial roadway. There is 58 feet of right-of-way on 10 Mile and 2 travel lanes, 26 feet of pavement. There are gravel shoulders of varying widths and no sidewalk in the area. ACHD policy requires on arterials that applicants dedicate right-of-way, widen the pavement, and construct sidewalk. And as noted in the staff report, staff is recommending a waiver of these policies and that any improvements be deferred and constructed by ACHD with the planned 10 Mile Road widening project. The right-of-way will be acquired by ACHD with that project, and the exact amount, which is unknown today, the exact amount of right-of-way acquired will be based on that alignment and design. For the same reason, staff recommends a waiver of policy for improvements to 10 Mile Road and recommends that the applicant not be required to widen the pavement or construct sidewalk. Roadway design is programmed for 2019, right-of-way acquisition in 2020, and construction in 2021. I also wanted to note that in reading one of the letters or emails from a neighbor, there was some concern about accidents that are occurring at the Lamont 10 Mile intersection and in that general area on 10 Mile. I did work with our traffic engineers. We reviewed some of the police reports for those. None were associated specifically with this business. Some were inattentive driving, reckless driving. Others had to do with some turning movements. And those are being evaluated by our engineering staff. And if anything needs to be implemented before the roadway project, ACHD will do that, and that is not a part of this application. So Lamont Road is classified as a collector. There's 2 travel lanes, 24 feet of pavement. There are gravel shoulders of varying widths of 3 feet to 10 feet in some areas. There's no sidewalk in the area, and as I mentioned, this is where the driveway is to the contractor's yard. We do have a 2017 traffic count on Lamont. It was taken about a half mile west of this site, and there were approximately 1,500 daily vehicle trips. That was about a year ago. So this is from 10 Mile looking west down Lamont. As you can see, the applicant in front of the residence. There's a berm and landscaping, and then here's the driveway to the contractor's yard. And then this is the western portion of their site adjacent to Lamont. District policy requires developers and applicants to improve collectors with pavement widening, curb gutter, and sidewalk. The applicant is requesting a waiver of these improvements due to the associated costs of the improvements and the seasonal nature of the businesses. Just a reminder of the findings that need to be made for granting of a waiver. That information was included in the staff memo. And staff recommends approval of the report as written. And I'll stand for questions.
Are there any questions, Mr. Goldthorpe?
I have a bunch that I'm going to ask a little later, but specifically on the improvements, the curb gutter, that sort of thing, are we proposing to waive those?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, staff has recommended a waiver of all improvements on 10 Mile Road
10 Mile.
and just standard improvements, curb gutter sidewalk on Lamont.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a question over here.
Sure.
Yeah, Madam President and Christie, the Lamont's a collector. What does the collector system look like, and those that are there? Is this a mid-mile collector? How does this fit with the others? Because it makes a huge difference as to what these, as you know.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, in this particular location, Lamont functions as a mid-mile collector.
Right. And
Might not be right on the mid-mile, but that's how it
Right.
functions.
right. Are there any other collector? What are the ones nearby? I mean, it obviously doesn't go across, go through. I did my own sort of Google Map look, but it'd be better for you to sort of describe how that affects the flow.
So, Madam President, Commissioner
Going down.
Hanson, as you can see here, Lamont really is, at this time, the only east-west roadway in the area. We do have on our master street map an extension of Overland, so eventually, as the area develops, Overland will be extended west, so there will be another east-west, and that will be an arterial.
Right. Oh, okay. So in the meantime, Lamont is sort of functioning as a extension of Overland, kind of an arterial of Overland.
Maybe somewhat.
I'm encouraged if, once we put that in, Lamont might be a quarter-mile collector, and we could add a few more quarter-mile collectors. Now that we have data on some of the accidents that have occurred on there, can there be an attempt to design how Lamont is developed as a collector to reduce the speeds so that those accidents are fender benders rather than fatalities? Because obviously if it's built wide and people are coming from the west at those kinds of speeds that are induced by the size despite the speed limit, we're going to have fatalities. So
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, most of the accidents that were reported were on 10 Mile and not on Lamont. And the speed limit on Lamont today is posted at 40 miles an hour.
right.
As far as collector widths go, 36 feet is the more narrow of the collectors.
Yeah, I'm just suggesting that as this develops, the speed limit's probably going to be reduced on Lamont, knowing that, designing it from day one as a 35-mile collector. It's 10 mile too, knowing from day one that we have speeding already on this collector, designing so that it functions as a 35-mile or 45 or whatever the ultimate speed will be. But since we have this information going into it, we have that knowledge. And that we can design, especially with the reference in the staff report, which I think is really good, that we might design this so that it doesn't have to go straight through and chop off a piece of this particular property, that it could be designed in a way that also is consistent with lower speeds. And my assumption is there may or may not be a light there in the future. I don't know, because there isn't a road going off to the east, but particularly with knowledge now that we have that there's been accidents there, to design it so that we do that. Thanks. Oh, the last thing, I was a little confused. So in the director's memo to the commission last night, he said that P&Z is approved at Ada County, but it does not need to go to the commissioners. Is that because the neighbors have no standing to appeal, or this isn't something that is appealed to commissioners, or so it's, or the time has elapsed, or what's the? I was a little confused as to why it's now no longer a Ada County Commission.
Sure. Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, this application only required approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission. The planner provided me with the facts and findings this week. So
So there's nobody has a right to appeal to the commission.
I don't know what their timelines are for that. Certainly, they could have appealed.
Oh,
The planner did not indicate that
Okay.
anyone has appealed.
The time has probably run out on that.
well, I was a little confused because it wasn't in the staff report, and the director's memo to us said it does not need to go to the Ada County Commission.
That's correct.
Okay.
I just had one question. How long has this facility been in existence as a yard?
Sure. Madam President, I think the applicant would be the best to
Okay.
answer that.
Okay. All right, so if there's no other questions, is the applicant here and wishes to testify? Come on up. Give your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name's Brittany Reed. I live at 2455 South 10 Mile Road. I am one of the 4 owners of the property. My husband and I own the property with our parents. We all bought the property together to use. I just wanted to start with to go over the use of the property a little bit.
Well, we're actually not here to discuss any of
Okay.
that because that's already been determined by county planning and zoning. We're
Yeah.
only here to talk about the improvements.
Okay.
So if you want to maybe keep your remarks to the waiver
Okay.
and why you want the waiver and
Great.
or that
I
you're just
also wanted to comment and say that we did go in front of the Ada County and their Ada County Commission, and it was approved. We
Right.
had neighbors that were there appealing, and we went in front of them.
The
So.
commission or the P and Z?
oh, the P&Z.
Oh, the PNC. Okay.
Okay.
So we're requesting a waiver. When we first bought the property, we were unaware that it was not zoned for us to be able to park equipment. The MLS sheet showed that it was for parking trucks, trailers, and equipment. It said it was a perfect spot to do that. And in our when we asked our realtor and the title company, they all said that we could park the equipment there. And so we were unaware that we were doing that without the proper permits or zoning. So once we have been made aware, we've been working on getting the permits for that. We're requesting the waiver because, like I said, we were unaware, and in our application, we've already had to spend a lot of money on our application for this permit. And now that it has been approved by planning and zoning, we are going to be having to put thousands of dollars in landscape screening. And so it's just not feasible for us to be able to add the sidewalks and gutters. Also, we feel like it's unnecessary. We have the construction company, which only has, which works out of town, as mentioned before. And so they only come there on Fridays or Mondays to pick up or drop off equipment, and they're out of town for weeks at a time. For instance, the last 3 weeks they've been out of town in Washington and have not been to and from the property bringing equipment. The lawn care company is a seasonal company. We have 3 working trucks that have been run at our busiest time of year. We have 5 employees and 3 working trucks that come to and from the property. That's only a few months out of the year. Our last 2 employees just finished working. They worked for the last couple of months. We had 2 employees the last 2 months, and they just finished the end of November. So we are no longer in business for the next 4 months, and then we'll start up again the end of March. So we're very seasonal, and like I said, at our very busiest time of year, we have 5 employees and 3 working trucks. And in comparison to the traffic on Lamont and 10 Mile, we are very, very minimal, very small. There's a Jackson's going in across the street on the corner of Lamont and 10 Mile. There's a sign up that says that there's a Jackson's coming soon. So I was under the impression that there was. And there are other businesses down the road on Lamont. There's Busy Bee on Black Cat that has lots of big equipment coming down that road every day, turning off of 10 Mile onto Lamont Road. They have several large trucks coming and going on that road, and that is not our business. Our big trucks come and go. I mean, they don't very often, just very minimal. And there's only one person that is approved to operate that equipment. So there's only one person that comes and picks up equipment on Mondays and drops it off on Fridays and a couple times a month. So it's just going to be really unfeasible for us to be able to make those improvements on that road.
Okay. Are there any questions?
Yes.
All
Why
right.
don't you ask yours first?
I don't have one. Well, I assume then that your business hasn't been at this location very long.
No, we've been there a year and a half.
Okay, great. Mr. Goldthorpe?
Yes, on the Pro Lawn business, reading the letter from your neighbor, where's its office? I mean, you say it's used, the vehicles are just stored there and come and go, but where do you work out of?
I am the only office person, and I just work out of my home.
Okay. As full disclosure, I live close by there. So I drive that sometimes, many times a day. Now, there are, I believe, additional trips that come out of that, additional to what has been described here. So I'm wondering what your definition of storage is, because that's what you say this property is used for. And if they come and go every day
Well,
out of storage.
I'm sorry, the TJ Construction Company uses it as storage, the big equipment yard. They use it as storage, and they don't come and go every day. Promo Lawn Care does come and go every day during the season of working. So they have the 3 trucks and trailers that will come and go from there every single day. TJ Construction does not have people coming and going from there every day.
What time of day do the longer trailers leave the yard?
The big
Is the
trailers,
ones we
TJ.
have pictures of, yes.
That before I don't know exactly what time of day, but we just, after planning and zoning meeting, we've determined that we're not going to be leaving until after 7 o'clock in the morning, and then not after 10 p.m. returning back to the
Okay.
between
because,
7 and 10 p.m.
As you know, sometimes the traffic is stacked up on Lamont, maybe between 12 and 15 vehicles
Yeah.
at that time of day.
Usually, when he's returning equipment back to the yard, he has to come from out of town, and he'll leave in the morning, and he'll return the equipment like midday, 11:30. Was the last time when he came back. He returned at 11:30. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah, thank you. We have a couple of other people who have signed up to speak. Leanne Thacker. Give your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Leanne Thacker. My address is 3174 South Silvertip Lane, Meridian, Idaho. I'm also an owner of the property that is that we're speaking of today. I just want to just have one thing to say, that there aren't any sidewalks that run down Lamont Road on either side of the road. So for us to put a sidewalk in on Lamont, I think would be, it just doesn't seem like it's necessary. For one thing, we don't have any customers or patrons that come and go from any of these businesses. We strictly only have our employees and the owners of the companies. It's owner-operator, small family businesses. There is a walkway between where you see the promo trucks parked over in front of the shop. Where the trees are on the picture off of Lamont there, those were actually rotting trees that we took out, and we put a big gate in there, and that's actually where the trucks come in and out to the contractor's yard, not right there in front of the shop, just to clarify. So, I mean, if these were businesses where customers were coming and going out of the businesses, I could totally understand that there would maybe need to be a sidewalk and curb and gutter, but that's just not the case. We work for large corporations. Our small business, we do pipeline construction for Tesoro Pipeline or Chevron Pipeline, Endeavor, if you've heard of them. And we're very, very aware of all the safety concerns. We have to follow every kind of safety measures. We have to take all kinds of operator qualification tests. everything to keep us in operating us in a safe manner. So, you know, when we put the gates in and everything, we made sure that it was wide enough for turns and everything for the trucks. So I just want to make sure that you're aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay,
I have a question.
really? You have a
Yeah,
question?
really.
All right, Mr. Goldthorpe has a question.
And it's just having to do with the future of the 10 Mile and Overland. If Lamont is blocked off or made into a ride-in, ride-out only, how will that impact your business?
I'm not really sure.
Well, if you could come up here, but I'm not sure that that's, I mean,
I've had those discussions.
On,
think that's
like where the trees are, is where we leave our yard when we're taking equipment in and out. There's a gate there now. I don't really know what you mean, I guess, by.
What if Lamont is blocked off so you cannot get onto 10 Mile anymore, or made so that you can only go make a right-hand turn? Will that impact you?
I mean, so we could turn right to go down to 10 Mile?
No,
Is that what you're?
turn right on 10 Mile,
Oh, turn right.
or
onto 10.
eliminate access to 10 Mile.
Well, yeah, I think that would be a bigger problem because 10 Mile Road is so busy. But I mean, so you're saying that Lamont would be blocked and no longer be a
No, I'm
road?
not saying that at all. But I've had some discussions as to the future of that area, and those things have been brought up. So I was just asking how that would impact you.
I think Christie might have
She
a
is.
response to that.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, it's unlikely that we would restrict turning movements at Lamont in the future. It is a collector roadway. We typically, in my knowledge, don't and haven't restricted collector roadways.
Even with the 5 Mile road that it butts into that's constantly backed up almost to Victory?
That's correct.
Wow. Okay.
It's a collector.
Yeah.
Thank you. And we have
It's too close to the
Angelique
other one.
Rude. Okay.
Madam President, Commissioners, my name is Angelique Rood. I live at 3415 West Lamont Road in Meridian. The front of my property, there's one property between my 7-acre parcel and the contractor's yard, and the back of one of my pastures butts up to the contractor's yard. I first want to say it's very unfortunate that we're here. No one wants to stand in opposition of their neighbor, and I certainly wouldn't be taking time out of my day if I didn't think that it's critical that you as commissioners support the recommendation of staff and require improvements to be made on Lamont. I would like to make a couple comments related to questions that you asked, and I'd first like to address seasonality of promo. I'm interested to hear, and perhaps a question you could ask is if the business is truly seasonal, why their trucks are currently equipped with snowplows. I do believe that business runs far more often than they indicate in their application or in front of you today. I live with my family on Lamont, and as we've acknowledged, Lamont's a very busy road. And I'm not sharing with you today that I believe that their traffic makes up even a significant portion of the traffic on Lamont Road. However, if there ever were to be a road that didn't need large semi-trucks and tractors driving in and out of a driveway, this is the road. In a response I submitted to you in the opposition section, I provided a picture of what the trucks look like when they're pulling in and out of this yard. And I know that you have that in front of you, but I'd like you just to keep in mind that these aren't small trucks. These aren't little landscaping trucks with small tractors behind them. I mean, these are semi-trucks carrying equipment in and out of that yard. And as you can see, and as staff's acknowledge, that creates significant hazards without making the required modifications to Lamont Road. I recognize that the Thackers may have received inaccurate information from their lender, from the title company, from the real estate company. But we as neighbors, we didn't cause that situation. And perhaps they should seek some sort of judgment from the title company if that is indeed what was told to them. I also recognize that there's a significant cost associated with the improvements to Lamont Road. And they've spent a lot of money building that contractor yard. But please keep in mind that they built that contractor yard illegally with no permits. So the money that they've spent to date, to me, is somewhat irrelevant, given the fact that they built that without the appropriate approvals in place. And had they gone through this process 2 years ago, before operating the yard for almost 2 years, they would have known that perhaps this isn't the best location for this contractor's yard because of the cost that they would incur to make it meet all of the requirements that ACHD has set forth. I, as an Ada County resident, count on you as commissioners to uphold the requirements of ACHD. And I hope that you'll follow staff's recommendations and require that these improvements be made. And again, I don't want to be standing here in opposition of my neighbor. I just think it's so critical that those improvements be made for the safety of my family, my neighbors, and everyone who utilizes that collector road on a daily basis.
Thank you. Any
you.
questions?
I appreciate you coming and raising this. This is, it's a challenge because we can't deal with land use where there's certain uses on the land occurred with or without permission because we've separated out. So now our evaluation, as you saw, that tools are very extremely limited. But I appreciate the fact that you've come forward and anticipated what kind of growth will happen in that area. But we have extremely limited tools. This is unique in the state, only in Ada County. Wouldn't be happening in Canyon if this were over there.
Commissioner Hanson, I appreciate that comment, if I might respond.
Yes.
The reason that I bring that up specifically is the reason we're here today is that the applicant is requesting a waiver due to cost. And because their argument is cost, I think it is relevant that the applicant brought up that they've already spent a lot of money at this location. That's the reason for that particular argument, sir.
Okay,
I
thank
get
you.
that. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the commission on this item?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Deanna Smith, 910 Main Street, Boise, Idaho.
You might want to raise that up a
Up
little.
again? Okay. How's that? Okay, I actually have a couple of questions and then comments. They'd be questions for staff. I'm curious if this area is clearly in Ada County, if it's in any of the city's area of impacts.
Meridian.
I don't think, but the land use has already been decided by
I
Ada
understand,
County.
I
So
just-
all we're here today to discuss is the ACHD policy.
I understand that.
So
I think
why
it's-
don't you ask all your questions and then we can have them addressed.
Okay, so I just have that one question. I'd like to know whether it's inside of area city of impact. Pertinence, I believe, of course, it's a collector. I certainly support you all continuing to invest in sidewalks for walkability in a future collector. I'm curious more about the road width, and I think this is a good opportunity for the commission and the agency to consider having different road widths and standards. A collector is not just a collector everywhere. Is this a future urban collector that's going to have subdivisions along it, or is it going to remain more of a country road collector? I think it would be useful to identify that future land use and think about what type of collector this truly is. We often, as we know, too often widen our roads and then have speeds. And as you know, you're not able to control speeds any way other than through the design of the road. This is an opportunity to potentially keep this road narrower and keep the speed limits down. I would say especially if it is going to urbanize in the future and have people who would be walking along the road. My other question is, this is a great opportunity to look at green stormwater rather than traditional curb gutter. And I would hope that the staff took a look at that to see if there's an opportunity here to install green stormwater. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy?
Madam President, I did cover in my presentation, this is in the City of Meridian's area of impact.
Okay.
Lamont is designated on the master street map as a residential collector. Now, that does not
Residential.
mean that there can't be non-residential uses along it, but a residential collector on the master street map. And this particular one indicates 2 lanes with bike lanes.
Thank you.
I-
Mr. Goldthorpe?
I would just make note of the fact that there is already another commercial application being filed with the county just down the road for an event center, which I believe will considerably increase the traffic on the road.
Okay, is there anyone else who wishes to testify? I'm sorry. Not now, thank you. Okay, so Commission, you have this before you now. Yes,
We need to afford the applicant rebuttal.
but the applicant has, the first person was the
That's correct.
applicant, so. But she also gets rebuttal. I know, but. Okay, if you could just sum up your rebuttal
Okay.
in a few
I
sentences.
just wanted to say that the improvements are not about widening the road. I mean, clearly, you know that. It's about the curb and gutter, and I don't see, we are requesting waiver due to cost, and we have put a lot of money into that yard already, and those were anticipated costs. We are small family businesses. We cannot afford to do unanticipated costs, and the sidewalk and gutter are not going to increase the safety on that road for the driving. It's the accidents are being caused by traffic and the widths and stuff of the road. It's not going to increase the safety of the road.
Okay, thank you. All right, Commission, you have it before you.
Madam President,
Mr. Woods?
move that we approve the staff report for the facility at 10 Mile and Lamont Drive. I think, well, that's my motion.
I'll second the
Okay.
motion.
Is there any discussion?
Just that,
Mr. Woods?
I just wanted a clarification. So your motion is to approve the staff report as written with
The waiver.
waiver of the improvements on 10 Mile, but requiring the improvements on Lamont. Is that?
correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Mr. Goldthorpe?
I would agree with that, and I would just also say that I would agree 100% with the letter that was written by Angelique Rude. Being that intimately aware of what happens on that road and its uses and speeds, which are far in excess of the posted limit right now, I was sorry that the county didn't pay more attention to that, but that's not our job. But I would vote in favor of this.
Okay, any further discussion?
I would just echo that it's so critical, even when there may not be people walking there today, there are people who walk, and the consequence of a fender bender between two cars is not nearly as serious as a car and a pedestrian. And this area is growing, and it's a residential collector. I think it's really critical that we have sidewalks and safety built in from the get-go, where we have a challenge to maintain and try and retrofit what hasn't been built in the past. And I would like to see us move towards a much more aggressive protection of pedestrians in areas that are, especially areas that haven't yet developed.
Okay, I'm going to call for the question now. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you all for coming. All right, the next item on our agenda is the Linder Village subdivision. We'll have a staff report by Mindy Wallace, then we'll hear from the applicant, and then we'll open it up for testimony, and we will limit that testimony to 3 minutes per person because there are a number of people signed up. So, Mindy, you want to go ahead and give us a staff report, please?
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Mindy Wallace, Development Services. Before you this afternoon, we have a decision briefing for the Linder Village subdivision. This was scheduled for a daytime commission meeting because the night meetings in December and January were canceled due to the holidays. So today we will have a project overview, a discussion of improvements as well as a proposed STAR agreement and neighborhood concerns regarding the extension of stub streets from Paramount subdivision. On November 15th, Meridian's Planning and Zoning Commission approved this application and recommended approval to the City Council. And
Well, I just want to ask the question. They approved the concept that we're going to be seeing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And this is scheduled for the City Council on December 18th.
Okay.
So this is an annexation, rezone, and preliminary plat application to allow for the development of 16 commercial lots, 1 residential lot, 2 common lots, and 2 other lots in approximately 82 acres. The site has frontage on Chinden Boulevard to the north, which is under the jurisdiction of the Idaho Transportation Department, or ITD, and Linder Road, which is a principal arterial roadway. The site is proposed to be developed in 2 phases, with phase 1 consisting of an 86,600 square foot Winco Foods, and that's located right here. 143,000 square feet of other retail uses, including a convenience market with gas station, medical offices, and a community library. Phase 1 is anticipated to be completed in late 2020. Phase 2 is planned to have 310,800 square feet of additional retail, medical, office, and office uses, with 44 single-family homes and 102 multifamily housing units consisting of live-work units, condos, and townhomes. Phase 2 is anticipated to be completed in 2022. Phase 1 of the development is anticipated to generate approximately 19,274 vehicle trips per day, with 1,807 of those occurring during the PM peak hour. At build-out, both phases 1 and 2, this development is estimated to generate 28,967 vehicle trips per day, with 2,826 of those occurring during the PM peak hour. Access to this site is proposed via 2 driveways onto Chinden Boulevard, a right-in, right-out, and a left-in, right-in, right-out at build-out of phase 2. 2 driveways on Linder Road, a right-in, right-out, and a temporary full-access driveway, as well as a new collector intersection on Linder Road, or Backage Road, and then access to Fox Runway. The collector would be extended. Additionally, there are 3 stub streets from Paramount Subdivision located directly south of the site, and we'll discuss those in greater detail later in the presentation. As part of the application, the applicants propose to enter into a STAR agreement to fund on- and off-site improvements, and through the STAR agreement, the improvements are proposed to be constructed in 2 phases. Phase 1 includes the widening of Chinden Boulevard to 5 lanes from Linder to Meridian Road, the widening of the Chinden Boulevard and Linder intersection to provide dual left turn lanes on the Chinden approaches of the intersection, and signal modifications to accommodate the widening. Widening of the Chinden Meridian Road intersection to provide for right turn lanes on Chinden Boulevard approaches, and an additional northbound left turn lane to create dual lefts on Meridian Road. Widening of Chinden Boulevard at Bergman Way to provide for right turn lanes. Construction of a new east-west collector roadway between Linder Road and Fox Runway, and signalization of the Backage Road or collector at Linder Road, and widening of the south leg of the Fox Runway intersection to provide for left and right turn lanes and modifications to the Paramount Subdivision entry features. ITD is required that all Phase 1 improvements be completed prior to occupancy of any building within the Linder Village development. Phase 2 includes the widening of Chinden Boulevard to 5 lanes from Meridian Road to Locust Grove Road, and modifications at the Chinden Boulevard Bergman Way intersection to restrict it to left in, right out. Linder Road is scheduled in ACHD's integrated 5-year work plan to be widened to 5 lanes from Cayuse Creek to Chinden Boulevard in 2019. This improvement will coincide with the Phase 1 improvements. With the construction of these improvements, all roadways and intersections are anticipated to operate acceptably. So Phase 2 of this development includes a conceptual residential development abutting the site's south property line adjacent to the Paramount Subdivision. The concept plan includes the extension of 3 public stub streets into the site: Arliss, Bergman, and Director. These stub streets were constructed in 2005 as part of the final platting of Paramount Subdivision 5 and 7. At that time, ACHD required the installation of barricades and signage stating that these roads would be extended in the future. Google Maps shows that in 2011, the 3 stub streets had barricades, and 2 of the streets, Arliss and Bergman, still had the signage. Today, the barricades have been removed at Bergman and Director, and the barricade and signage still remain at the terminus of Arliss. The applicant's proposal to extend 3 public stub streets into the site is consistent with ACHD's continuation of streets policies, which requires the extension of stub streets into adjacent development. To provide local access to the Linder Village site and for those living within Paramount, staff has recommended the extension of Bergman Way from its current terminus to the east-west collector roadway with the first phase of development. The extension of Bergman Way with the first phase of the development was also recommended by the City of Meridian. We have received letters regarding the extension of stub streets and the potential for cut-through traffic in the Paramount neighborhood, and the extension of Bergman has been raised as a concern. The traffic impact study included an analysis of potential cut-through traffic. The study notes and staff agrees that the most direct route to the Linder development from the south is via Linder Road, and that's shown in blue. By accessing Cayuse Creek and using neighborhood streets to access the site, the traveling public would travel about a half mile out of their way before reaching the Linder Village development. Extension of the roadway provides not only vehicular access, but also provides local access for bicyclists and pedestrians to commercial and office uses within the development. To provide traffic calming and a clear distinction between the Linder Village site and Paramount, subdivision staffs recommended that bulb outs be constructed on the Bergman Way extension adjacent to Paramount subdivision and at the Bergman Way collector intersection. In addition to the construction of bulb outs, staff has recommended that Bergman Way be redesigned to shift east to provide a less direct route to the collector roadway. The bulb outs would remain in place even after the residential portion of the site is developed. The traffic study estimates that 405 vehicle trips per day are anticipated to access Linder Village through Paramount subdivision. These trips are anticipated to originate from within Paramount, and it's estimated that 30% of those trips would access the site via Arliss, which has a current traffic count of 482 trips per day, and that 70% would use Bergman, which has a current traffic count of 467 north of Cayuse Creek. The extension of the stub streets is anticipated to add an additional 120 vehicle trips per day to Arliss and 285 trips to Bergman, increasing the total daily traffic volumes on Arliss to 602 trips per day and Bergman to 752 trips per day. ACHD policy allows up to 2,000 vehicle trips per day on an existing local street. With the additional vehicle trips anticipated to be generated by Linder Village development, both Arliss and Bergman are anticipated to operate an acceptable level well below planning threshold of 2,000 vehicle trips per day. Some letters have noted that residents of Paramount would have access to Linder Village through Bountiful Commons. Bountiful Commons is a different subdivision. The boundary for that is highlighted in blue. Bountiful Commons has private roads and drive aisles that will provide access to Linder Village, but there are not public street connections to that site. In summary, roadways and intersections are anticipated to operate at an acceptable level of service with the improvements proposed in the STAR agreement. The application meets ACHD policies and standards. The extension of stub streets is consistent with ACHD policy and provides access without using the arterial system for all users, including bicyclists and pedestrians. And this application is scheduled to be heard by the Meridian City Council on December 18th. Staff recommends approval of the staff report as written. I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions of staff?
I just have a question about the traffic calming on Cayuse and Bergman and Arliss, which are not part of the development but will be impacted. The information we have now about speeds that are potential through there, knowing that we can design, and we've done that now in other places, design it down to 20 or 25 miles an hour. Can we have the developer produce and help pay for those traffic calming features on all three of those off-site?
President Baker and Commissioner Hanson, you can certainly consider that as part of a motion for this application, yes.
Yeah, but just that'd be a great concern, because obviously traffic's going to speed up until it's calmed down. So there isn't traffic calming right now. So that.
No, I did check with our traffic staff this morning, and they have done several investigations in this area. I think they've said 10 to 15 over the years, and so there are a lot of streets within Paramount in general that we're continually to monitor.
Yeah, Thank you.
Any other questions? I have a couple. So you said there were barricades placed at the 3 stub streets, and some of them are now gone.
Correct.
But is it clear that they're not cul-de-sac, but that they would continue on?
President Baker, they're not cul-de-sac. The street dead ends into wooden fences.
So it just ends in a wooden fence?
Correct.
But the plat that was, I don't know which, you said it was subdivision number, whatever, it was clear on the plat that these would be extended?
Correct.
Okay. And I assume that's because of the connectivity, and I assume that's because when the developer built this section out, there was the anticipation that this would be commercial at this corner.
I can't speak
I would
to
assume that
that.
it was. Could you go to show us where the pedestrian and the bike connection would be? Because if you take and you make that little crook, I don't know how, would a pedestrian have to walk over into that area before they could access that collector? Or is there going to be like a mini path or something?
I think perhaps the applicant would be best to address that. They have
Okay.
a system of micropaths planned.
Okay, great. That would be great. Okay, I think that's all that I had.
I have one more question.
Mr. Woods?
So, can you go to the previous slide? No, the one that you first had up for Commissioner Baker. I guess my question is, so on that collector, it appears that you've got pedestrian crosswalks somewhat identified on that future collector. Does it make sense to have those as sort of bulb outs now at those pedestrian crosswalks on that collector? Did you take a look at that?
President Baker and Commissioner Woods, in the staff report, we didn't recommend the striping or signage of defined crosswalks until the residential development comes in, because we weren't exactly sure where those pedestrians would be, and we don't know all of the future land uses on the north side of the roadway. If you wanted to define those and require bulb outs to be constructed or raised crosswalks, we can certainly do that.
Just as a follow-up, this is the applicant's drawing. Are those, am I reading that right? Are those proposed crosswalks, those little?
White squiggles?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. Any other questions, Mr. Hanson?
One quick question. So there's 3 stub streets going into this future residential development, but only 2 coming out. Did we not consider having 3 coming out so that you don't have the funneling even within this new residential area? It seems like a logical thing to have, Arliss do the same sort of going into there and jogging over, so that you have 3 going in and 3 coming out, and you have less funneling onto one. It's improved, protect the connectivity that's already there.
President Baker and Commissioner Hanson, I'll let the applicant speak to that a little bit. Part of the reason it's designed like this is to defer cut-through traffic. The more circuitous the route is to get in and out, the less the traveling public will tend to use, and it'll be more local neighborhood traffic.
Right. I get that. You can still make it circuitous and have 3 ways to get to that new collector. But as this is designed, it's sort of funneling into the one, and mostly it'll go into that one that's marked there on red, rather than 3. I'd be very interested in that, and ask the applicant actually to tell us why they might not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is the applicant here and wish to make a statement? Do you need, like 10 minutes?
Less.
Less? Okay. I'll hold you to that.
Madam President, Ken Howell, partner at Hawley Troxel. My business address is 877 Main, Suite 1000. I represent the developer Links DMG Partners on this project, and I'll be very brief in my comments here. We fully agree with the staff report and the conditions that are expressed, so no real disagreement. And to address Commissioner Hanson's question, since it's fresh on my mind about the connectivity of Arliss, that was frankly a concession to move over and combine with Bergman as an additional means of traffic calming on Arliss as opposed to having a direct straight-through shot to the east-west connector road, collector road. And we think that by doing so, it will diminish the overall amount of traffic on that street, whereas if it were placed all the way through, it would tend to increase traffic. And as we note from the staff report, we think realistically the possibility of a lot of excess cut-through traffic to skip Linder Road is probably remote, given that it adds an additional half mile. That's not to say people won't try to figure out the shortest way to get someplace, but it seems unrealistic that that would be a prospect here. And the traffic counts kind of support that analysis. So it's, and I suppose it'd be a toss-up one way or the other, whether you make that connectivity or not. But that was a concession that was made to not have that specific connectivity through. Another question that was raised earlier, Madam President, was the issue of pedestrian access. Yes, those, Commissioner Wood's question, the markings across the east-west collector road are intended to be pedestrian access points. Where the clubhouse is located just below where it says future residential, or just above where it says future residential development, we do agree with the staff comment that we do an additional jog over and take that road over to the east side of the clubhouse. It's a little difficult to see from my distance here, but if we were to do that, and we did submit an additional conceptual drawing showing that change, if we did that, where Bergman presently on this diagram connects to the east-west collector road, there would be a small, like 6 or 8 car parking lot with pedestrian connectivity through to the adjacent sidewalk there, and again in turn to the overall development. So I think that addresses the specific questions that were raised. You'll note that there are 2 scenarios described in the application and the staff report for overall access to the site. And the east-west connector road is currently proposed to go through to Fox Run and use the signalized access at Fox Run.
Mm-hmm.
There was some concern earlier in the project that we did not have access to Fox Run. We have an agreement in principle. We don't have a signed agreement. We have an agreement in principle, and things are going very well on that we're pretty confident we'll have access to Fox Run. And then the final point, Madam President, I would raise is that the staff report in a number of locations indicates that it's conditioned on approval of the STAR agreement, which we agree with, and if not, we have to come back and do some additional work on talking about access. The staff report also lists some specific milestones that it describes as being in the STAR agreement. I will tell the Commission that we're pretty far down the road on negotiations with the STAR agreement, but it's not signed up yet either. We think we're going to get there, and we think we're at pretty small additional details. But one of the things that we hope and believe will change in that STAR agreement are those specific milestones. So it's our understanding in discussions with staff that to the extent that there are milestones described in the STAR agreement, it will be the milestones that are actually in the final signed version of the STAR agreement and not the milestones that are described presently in the staff report. So with that, I'd stand for any questions at this time.
I just had one question. Those little squiggly kind of lines that ring the future residential development and then also connect, north and south, are those your micropaths?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Woods?
If I could, thank you, Mr. Howe. I guess my concern is on the east-west collector. Is parking going to be allowed on that? I mean, is that the street that'll allow for parking?
Madam President, Commissioner Woods, there is no planned parking on the east-west collector.
So I guess my sense there is that I'm not requesting that you add any proposed pedestrian crossings, but where there are pedestrian crossings, my sense is instead of putting in the curb and then having to go back and make it bulb out, that it would save the taxpayers and you if we just did it once. So I'm not looking to increase the number of pedestrian crossings, but perhaps fire a bulb out where they are proposed on that. So, just curious your thoughts on that. I don't think it's going to add tremendous cost. It's not. to the benefit of the future, you know, waiting for commission to get a bunch of TELUS requests saying that they wish that they had bulb outs there.
Yeah. Madam President, Commissioner Woods, I don't specifically have a good answer for you on that at this time. We'd have to look at what the additional cost with that would be, and then whether that's really justified given what would probably be the likely pedestrian access through there anyway. But I'll consult and be able to provide a little better response on that on rebuttal.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Mr. Hanson?
Madam President, I would wholeheartedly agree with Commissioner Woods' assessment. This is a collector road that will not have any front-on housing. The temptation to drive in excess will be significant, and yet we have an invitation to people to walk across. They need to know, and traffic calming, bulb outs, clear crosswalks, raised crosswalks, those sort of things ensure that. And with this knowledge in advance, we don't want to have to come back and justify after a fatality to say that we really needed some safety here because we've already created an invitation for people to walk across a collector through a neighborhood where it has front-on housing or there's a lot more activity. It's quite different. So I would strongly emphasize that we should have at every one of the pedestrian access and crossing points some sort of protection to ensure traffic calming. I assume it's going to be designed for 25 miles an hour, maybe 30 miles an hour. I don't know what the exact is, but that should be the design speed, not just the posted. My question to you is whether the developer would be willing to help ensure that the traffic calming is also added to the collectors to the south, which will lead into the future development, Cayuse Creek, Bergman, and to a certain extent Arliss, because those weren't designed with traffic calming. Those are more traditional collectors through neighborhoods, especially Cayuse Creek, and so there is speeding, but there's there, and we will probably collect data on that. So making sure as people enter, and their intent, if they enter, okay, I'm going to get to the, is not thinking I'm going through a neighborhood. No, I'm going up to Winco. I'm driving to. Their intent is to get right through it. What traffic calming does so well is to remind them that they have to pay attention to their surroundings and forces them. They are uncomfortable. Even with no cars around and no people around, they are uncomfortable driving in excess of the speed limit. And again, it's the knowledge we have that unless we address those in advance, knowing we're going to increase the number of vehicles on these collectors, that if there's a fatality, that we could have addressed this on the front end. Is this something that developer would be willing to put into some off-site traffic calming, bulb outs, et cetera?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that sort of requirement, should the Commission choose to impose it, would impose significant additional concerns for the developer in that we don't have control over those locations, and so it would impose a requirement on us where we don't presently have the legal ability to do it. So it's, in one sense, it's kind of a practical impossibility should we not have direct cooperation. Having said that, however, we are interested certainly in traffic calming, as we've illustrated already with the additional revisions and acceptance of staff recommendations that we have commented to you. But I would note, just kind of overall conceptually, this whole issue of cut through, especially using Cayuse and the other streets, as staff notes, it's really kind of going out of the way. So it's not a cut through, it's an additional extension. Now again, is that to say people won't try to find the most speedy route that they think they can find? Well, of course not. But by design, it seems not completely logical that someone would go a half mile out of their way in order to save time.
Yeah, well, actually, I'd suggest one is that that when traffic is backed up on Linder and you can see the cars stopped, people know there's another route. So even though it may be a little longer, they'll continue to move, and so that's how it will be used. The other is that we have a whole process where, yeah, it's not your property, you can't build it on there, but there's negotiations that we can enter into where you can help fund that, because we're going to be asking the taxpayers to help fund that. And the source of the increased traffic is because of a new development, commercial development off-site. So there is a way of negotiating and getting resources so that this particular neighborhood doesn't get to the back of the line, which is, believe me, it's an extremely long line to help fund traffic calming in areas that should have been done when they were first developed. So my concern, obviously, is those issues become moot when we have a fatality after the fact, and we knew in advance we could have slowed traffic down. And it's a huge difference when somebody's hit by a car going 25 miles an hour and somebody's hit by a car going 35 or 40 miles an hour. Usually it's a matter of life and death.
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, sure, and as I said before, if that's where the commission chooses to go, then certainly we'll do what we need to do. I would also note that in terms of this particular project, the conditions already require that prior to occupancy of phase one, that the road construction be completed. So, you know, the issue of cut-through traffic being caused by us because of construction on Linder Road, I don't think is a particular concern.
I don't think it's construction on Linder Road, it's just the traffic on Linder Road, because there's, you know, we're going to be expanding the bridges north. Linder's going to be an increasing arterial. There's induced demand that's heading towards Linder, like a beacon. So we will have a lot of that, and at the near peak times, you will see people stopped at the lights, and there's some alternatives for them to cut through.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a number of people signed up who wish to testify. We'll start with Drew Ebright. If you come up, give your name and address for the record, and also limit your remarks to 3 minutes. We'll have a timer, so thank you.
My name is Drew Ebright, and I live at 1065 West Barrymore Drive, which is located on the corner of Barrymore, Bergman, and Cayuse Creek. As you know, Paramount Subdivision is a very highly populated area with tons of children. We have a high school, a elementary school, and also a middle school, all within the boundaries of this school district, and also within the subdivision. We have a very, very high density of traffic that comes through already, with the cut-through traffic that comes through from the high school. Additionally, I've lived in our house for 8 years, and we are very concerned with having the additional traffic come directly behind our house, adjacent to our property, and continue on into this development. Certainly, we're not against the development itself, but we are very concerned with that additional traffic potentially leading to, as you say, fatalities and other traffic incidents that could result in injury, and serious injury at that. I'm very concerned with that issue, and not having any way to recourse for us to be able to do anything about that. What would you guys do as just as individuals to think that could you have helped that situation any? I mean, providing additional traffic calming measures such as putting a jog in Bergman going over is a great solution to this situation. I would highly recommend doing such thing, and also taking Bergman and also adjusting where that cut through, where that jog in the traffic goes, to have it run parallel to the micropath at the south side of this development where the new residential area is, and have it turn at that point to limit that stretch of road as a speedway, because it will become a speedway. I witnessed it with all of those changing traffic patterns that we have had in the past, with all the traffic studies that they have, ACHD has performed in our neighborhood.
Thank you.
Very
I just
good.
can I
Thank
have
you.
one question, and we've seen this throughout the county where they've asked for traffic calming. The people it calms the most are those who actually live there. So whether we want to admit it or not, it's our own neighbors who are exceeding the speed limit. So you understand, if we were to ask for additional traffic calming right in your neighborhood, that means everybody's going to be affected. Even just to go home, you're going to have to drive the speed limit.
I am all for driving the speed limit.
Okay. Yeah, that's going into it. We always have somebody who says, we don't need it.
Additionally, with the high school traffic that comes out through lunch, I mean,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
before the Fred Meyer development was developed over there, the high school students were cutting through Cayuse Creek and they're flying down 35, 40 miles an hour, and that's documented.
Oh,
To
I
cut
know
through to
that.
get over to Meridian Road.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you. All right, next is Ron Hallbachen.
I'm a new resident to Meridian, very excited
And
to
your
live
name
here.
and address for the record?
5453 North Mitcham Avenue, Meridian. That is the Paramount Division. I just got notice of this here. I've been traveling. I knew there was going to be the Windco was going to be coming in there. I just got notice last night. As far as the cut-throughs, I'm highly opposed of any cut-throughs. I believe with the residential area, I think that's okay to have something, but going into the Winco area, I'm highly opposed to any cut-throughs, full traffic. We've already got traffic situations in the Paramount area. It took me about 7 months to find a house that we liked in the Paramount area. The first weekend we were here, which was about 3 months ago, my wife was T-boned over by the Raising Angels daycare center, which is right behind the new apartment buildings there, which people were speeding, and she was hit going 45 miles an hour, T-boned, and laying on her side. She was able to walk away. So I guess my point is that coming from the south and coming from the east side of Paramount, why would people go to Chinden, go around and come into the area when they can always go through the shortcuts, going right through Producer and Director Drive? And with the apartment building over there that has 425, I believe it's 420 some occupancies, apartment buildings, where do you think they're going to go? Producer Drive is already very busy in the morning, in the afternoon with the children that's coming through there. I myself have 2 small children. I go to the Paramount school. We love the area. I just don't agree. I don't know who all, of you guys or these people here that live in the area, but it took me a long time. We researched it out very well. And now I drove through the area that is in question this morning because I'm not familiar with it. But I also come from an area back in Fargo, North Dakota that I had to deal with some of this stuff and was opposed to it, and we were able to shut it down. I believe in retail. I think what you're doing around the outskirts of it on Chinden and North Linder is awesome. But you're going to turn a residential area, a residential traffic area into a retail traffic area. Roundabouts, whatever you're going to do, it's traffic. 25 miles an hour, I don't see that going through that neighborhood unless, it's around a corner. I believe that there will be accidents. I'm totally 100% opposed to any cutouts that go into the Windco development, the residential area. I'm okay with that, not a problem. But I'm totally 100% opposed. That's all I got.
Thank you. Okay, next is Deanna Smith.
I put it down to, is that good? Deanna Smith.
Well, if you want to be heard, you have to have
Down, last time it was
it.
to
Okay.
high, too low. Okay, Deanna Smith, 910 Main Street, Boise, Idaho. I first just really want to commend the developer on this overall concept. I think it does a fairly good job of representing what Communities in Motion and other plans for this part of the world is looking for. I particularly like the future residential on the border side where residential exists today. I would just really urge the commission to do connect all 3 stubs. Volumes are really not the problem for residential nearly as much as speed, and there's a lot of research that supports that. If you connect all the stubs, you'll actually diffuse even more of the traffic, and no one street is going to have to carry that. I do agree with the staff that this is not a logical cut through. The stubs are really for the people who live in Paramount. And if you stub all 3 of those streets, you will make it easier for the people who live there, especially if you design them well as local roads that are very low speed designed. good pedestrian connections, good safe crossings. You'll enable those who can't drive in that neighborhood, particularly the youth, which I know this is a high family area. So I would encourage you to really consider all 3 stubs and making all 3 of them both directions. And the comments from Commissioner Woods regarding looking at, let's get the design of this collector right at the beginning. Absolutely consider some bulb outs. I think there needs to be a few more crossings, but make sure pedestrians go the easiest, shortest path. So look very carefully. Your staff's done a pretty good job, but I think there's a few locations that could include some more crossings, because people will be crossing there. That's just what pedestrians do. They come and they go as the shortest distance. So I heard Mindy possibly recommend raised crosswalks, which I would love to see you do, and that would help keep the speeds on this collector, whatever design speed you want, 25, 30 miles an hour. And with that, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Thank you. It's also been brought to my attention that, we have received a number of emails regarding this. So if you've sent in an email, we have read it and we understand your point of view. So I don't know if there's any of you on here who have sent in an email, but if you have, like I said, we've already read them. All right, next up is Kathy Willove. Not seeing that, but okay.
Sorry, I wrote it really fast to get in here.
It's all right.
My name is Kathy Wilkie. I live on 405 West Gable Street, the expressway of Paramount between Linder and Meridian. It is a direct pathway. It is a single loaded street, and there is no stop sign from Fox Run to Producer. There are speeds in excess already of 45 on that street. I have lived here since June, and there has been 2 children already almost hit in the crosswalk after school. The last one I was outside, it was the Friday before Thanksgiving break. I was out with my daughter who rode her bike home because my daughter does attend the elementary school. My son attends the high school. There was a man traveling down Gable very fast, slammed on his brake, honked on his horn, and proceeded to yell at the 4th grader that she was in the wrong being in the crosswalk. I ran over there. I comforted the 4th grader. This upsets me greatly. That could have been my child. We play at the park. That's Gable Park right across the street. There are a lot of kids there. During the snow time, it was really fun. This is our first snow. There was 20, 25 children in that park building snowmen together. I am concerned about this crossway for both the Fox Run and the Bergman, because if you go down Bergman, you go onto Barrymore, it goes out onto Gable. It's a direct pathway to Producer onto Meridian. There is no need to go onto Chinden or Linder at that point. There's Seguro Canyon right across the street. There's all the subdivisions over there to the east. You tell me that none of them are going to use my street to get to Winco. It's going to happen. The traffic is already too fast. We don't have the stop sign. That was actually going to be my first thing I was doing, and then I heard about this meeting. That's why I'm here, because I was actually going to be starting the process of trying to get a stop sign on Gable Street for my children and the neighborhood children, because it is very, very dangerous. So I'm asking how they plan to affect that. They say that it's not going to increase the traffic. It is going to increase the traffic by quite substantial amounts. It's already very, very high traffic flow. They say that the speeds aren't going to increase. The speeds are already too high. Okay, I'm strongly, strongly opposed to this going through from Bergman onto our street, because, as I said, if they go down Bergman, it's just a quick jaunt onto Barrymore and onto Gable. And that's my street, and I am very, very concerned with this. So my question basically is, how do they propose to stop the accidents and stop this? Without the crossways or cross pathway there, we've already had almost 2 accidents in 6 months. What child is it going to take? Because that's about where we're gotten to. I'm very passionate about this because I saw the last one. The little girl was crying. She was in the right. He was wrong. How do we affect it for our children? How do we keep them safe?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Beth Schweibens.
Yep, you got it. Hi,
My name is Beth Schweibens, and I live at 6052 North Mitcham, which is off of Director. So I'm on, we like to split streets in Paramount. So I'm off of the one that's off of Director. I'm very concerned that in this application that the only cut through that was addressed was Bergman. Bergman is definitely an issue. It's predominantly a high school issue, and I don't know how to help them. They're going to leave that high school. They're going to be going down that road 45 miles an hour. I don't know what traffic control you can do to stop that, right? And so I'm going to let the people on that side of the neighborhood talk to that because I'm not as familiar with that. But what I'm concerned about is Director. As you guys know, there are no grocery stores off of Eagle Road and Fairview and Locust Grove. There are thousands and thousands of homes in that intersection, anywhere between Fairview and Chinden and Locust Grove over, not just the residents of Paramount. If anybody is coming north on Meridian Road, they've got a couple choices with Winco here. They can turn left on Producer, they can turn left on Director, or they can wait at a stoplight at Chinden Road to make a left-hand turn onto Chinden, which is stopped now at rush hour, and I don't think that's going to be fixed anytime soon. And then they're going to take another left-hand turn at a stoplight back into Paramount to get to the shopping center. So there's a serious cut-through problem with Director. People are already going down that road 45 miles an hour. If we put a Winco, we're going to put the Winco, I get it. But if we allow people to cut through the neighborhood there, you're talking probably, hundreds and hundreds of more trips just down that road. Because I would avoid the 2 stoplights. I think anybody would. And my other concern here is that you're not only talking about the hundreds of children that are there, you are talking about a 55 and up neighborhood that's there. You're talking about walking paths. You're talking about veranda senior living that is all there. And Director currently has landscaping medians to which they've planted the Carl's Forester grasses. My kids already can't cross Director safely because no car could ever see them. We're putting a pool that's already been approved at the corner of Fox Run and Director. There will be hundreds of children crossing Director every day. No crosswalks, no stop signs, and now we're going to have hundreds more cars coming down that road. I need you guys to look at that. And again, it's not only going to be Director, it's also going to be Gable. There have actually been 2 almost fatal accidents on Gable. One since I've lived in the neighborhood in the last 3 years. My kids cross that intersection every day, and they will tell me the numerous times they've almost got hit by a car. I've been told that we've requested a stop sign on that road many, many times in a crosswalk. Now you're saying, hey, let's put hundreds of more traffic trips through the neighborhood still without a stop sign. And I want to know how our neighborhood is going to be helped with this increased traffic flow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Alicia Malstein.
Hi, my name is Alicia Muhlstein. I live in 584 West Dreyfus Street in the neighborhood of Paramount. When that development was first plighted, I guess a long time ago, before the Arliss and Bergman were supposed to go through, and they knew it was going to go through, it was a designated mixed-use residential. A Winco is not mixed-use residential. They changed the zoning for that Winco. And so because we now have that Winco, the Arliss and Bergman need to be addressed so that they do not go into now industrialized area, because that's just kind of ridiculous. 405, I just kind of jotted a note, so I'm like off the cuff here, but my son is actually one of the children that was hit 2 years ago off a Director sledding from a truck, and he is now missing part of his brain. And I know one of you guys said that the children or the lives are more important, and yes, I do agree, lives are more important, but I do not see Ada County Highway or developers addressing this with our neighborhood. That those 2 access points, along with Director access point that goes through, our neighborhood needs to be cut off. We can drive 1 to 2 minutes out to Linder, out to Chinden. We don't need cut throughs through our neighborhood, because I'd say they're saying like 405 extra vehicles a day will be going down Bergman. Like, if your house was right there, would you want extra 405 people driving down there? And the Director that Beth just talked about, that is right now out of control. And with the pool and kids walking across there and the 55 plus residential right there in veranda, all those cars going through, they will cut through Meridian, because I cut through Meridian. I go through Meridian to avoid Chinden all the time. So I'm doing it, and I'm sure all these other people would do it if that road is going out to Director on that right, that cut through west-east road. Let's see her. That's basically all I have to say. I can't really form my thoughts because I'm all jumbled. But I do not see Bergman, Arliss, or Director that our neighborhood should be cut off from that industrialized area and protect our neighborhood. And we can go out to Linder. We can go out to Chinden. It takes 2 minutes for our neighborhood to go out and everybody else to stay out and cut instead of cutting through. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug Humphrey?
Hi, thank you and good afternoon. Doug Humphrey, 693 West Dreyfus in Paramount Subdivision. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I wanted to mention that I, along with a couple of other people who are here today, serve on the Paramount Advisory Board, which is designated as a liaison between the Homeowners Association, which is still managed by Bryden Corporation, and the residents. I mention that not to assert any kind of special privilege or authority, and I'm just speaking for myself here, but I mention it because we are closely attuned to what people express opinions about in our neighborhood about things. And next to barking dogs and missing cats, traffic is the one thing that people bring up more often than anything else. Now, my wife and I are retired. We walk these streets multiple times a week for exercise. And honestly, we don't see people doing traffic studies. What we see are people driving, as has been expressed by almost everybody here, way too fast already. We've got long, straight streets with no stop signs almost and no traffic calming measures. We've got a high school, which means teenagers with cell phones and cars, and you add all those things up and they go too fast. And there are too many of them, and that's the way it is now. And I realize that we're not here to talk about enforcement, but we seriously need that, and we seriously need some traffic calming measures in our neighborhood, and not just on those collector streets feeding right into the development, but those that serve as the approaches to that. A couple of people have mentioned the apartments that are being built to the south of there, dumping, those cars haven't even started to appear yet. When we drive the neighborhood at 25 miles an hour, we get tailgated. We don't see anything like that observance of the speed limit there. So we understand that the future residential development there is going to happen, and we welcome those people, and we understand that those folks have to have a way of getting in and out of their neighborhood. So we don't object at all to access to that development. But I agree with Alicia and the others who say that's where it should stop. And thanks to the woman who doesn't live in Paramount who is suggesting what would be good for us, we don't want that. We're willing to take a little extra inconvenience to get into Linder Village in order to prevent the cut-throughs. And if people say there won't be the cut-throughs, I think they live on another planet because it's already happening, as has been expressed here. So that's about all I have to say here, but you're in a position to help us out, and I'm encouraged by some of the comments that you folks have made about requiring additional traffic calming measures in the entirety of the neighborhood and not just some of those local streets. And we do appreciate that and hope you'll follow through and help us out a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sally Reynolds, something like that.
Good afternoon. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Who do I give that to?
Can you do that in 3 minutes?
Yes.
She'll put it up for you, but why don't you
Thank you. So I'm actually going to throw out my remarks because there are a lot of statements made here today, and I want to address those questions. First of all,
Full
my name
name
is
and
Sally
address.
Reynolds,
Need
and
your name and
I'm really
address.
short. My name is Sally Reynolds, and I reside at 1166 West Bacall Street. First of all, I just want to clarify that this was not recommended for approval as it is. They recommended it with conditions. Conditions being that the concept plan be updated to show the widening of Chinden, the collector road that's along the back be executed in ink. This application came up a year and a half ago. They have had over a year and a half to come to that agreement with Brighton. They have not, and Planning and Zoning said, you have to do that before it goes to City Council. This is the first time we have heard that they are finally in talks with Brighton, for which I am immensely grateful. The other condition was lot 16 needs to be included in phase 1, and if Bergman does go through, there needs to be traffic calming measures. So, and as for the staff, the jog over to Bergman and that concept plan that's been redesigned by the developer, the public has not seen that yet. So, also I just wanted to address Commissioner Hanson's remarks on Arliss. That was actually a change that the developer made in request to the residents, for which we are grateful. Arliss has homes frontage on it with driveways, and those children are playing there all the time, and there are cars parked up and down. I have almost hit children who come out behind pickup trucks because you can't see them. So we asked that Arliss not go through. We wanted it to be a more calm, even more calm than it is, and we are requesting that Bergman and Director not go through as well. And also the reason for Arliss was because the high school students can take a right out of the high school and turn left on Arliss, and they'd be right there at Winco. So they would just speed down out at lunch break all the time. Do I have access to the, go ahead. Okay, go one more time. We did ask them for a continuance. So here is the paths of all of the cut-throughs in Paramount. As you can see, the Brighton apartments, there's, like he said, over 400 apartments on the corner. They are not yet, people aren't living in them yet, so all of the cars, we don't have any traffic counts on those. We will be able to access Linder Village through Bountiful Commons, and if not, it would be right on Linder Road for maybe 500 feet. As for, and then, so you can see the one line is Gable. I don't know if you can see it coming in from the east that she was talking about. That's Gable, and where the pool is, that's Director. So we would also request that coming down Fox Run, people cannot make a left from Fox Run into the development, that it be a right only. Go ahead. So this is a close-up of Rocky Mountain, so you can see they will come straight down and take a left on Bergman and go right through. Go ahead, thanks. All right, there are other commercial areas, and if you just want to flip through these, go ahead.
If you want to just make a concluding statement.
Basically, sorry, go. There you go. So here, this is the concluding statement. The Stubb Street options are to please end it in the residential or to take it all the way over to the east. And I would definitely ask for traffic calming measures such as bulb outs, but even more beyond that. Also, the staff report said that the crosswalks aren't going to be done in phase 1. And if that road is built in phase 1, those crosswalks need to be done in phase 1. And they need to have those traffic calming measures.
Okay, thank you.
For any questions.
Thank you. All right, that then concludes the people who have actually said they wanted to testify. Is there anyone else who wishes to come up and speak? Sure, come on up.
My name is Joanne Smith Curtis. I live at 160 West Heston Drive, Meridian. I have lived here for 3 years. I live right at the corner of Meridian and Chinden. We have the Catholic school across the street, one direction. I have the over 55. It's my backyard. I'm right off of Director. And then right into where I live is the also the entry into the 55 area, which I think they only have 2 entries into that 55 area, and that's on Director. Where I turn in, that is their gate. I could not safely cross that street. I will be 90 years old on December 15th, and I walk slowly. And I'm sure there's a lot of people over 55 that won't walk very fast. There's no way that I don't even drive, I don't like to drive much anymore, so I am limited to walking. And I feel very much for the safety of all of our residents in that area, because people do not drive slowly here. Even if you have stop signs, they don't even stop at the stop signs. So I think you really need to consider how important it is for the safety of all of the residents in the Paramount subdivision when you are agreeing to let them take this route into the Costco area, or the Winco area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Denise Lefevre. I live at 6706 North Salvia Way, Meridian. I'd like to challenge the commission to think about another option. Bergman Road right there, you have two commercial developments that are really huge. You have Linder Village and you have Fred Meyer's, which I shop at Fred Meyer's, and it's very difficult now to get in and out. And I do go through Temple Drive or Temple Way sometimes to exit that neighborhood to get to a light. So you have a chance right now to stand back and look at the project as a whole and actually put a light there. So that might mean that you have to move the light at Fox Run and move that somewhere else, but to really give a chance to look at it overall and look at it. I also have some other things that I wanted to bring up. And one is there's some recommendations. Limit Paramount Stub Street's access to the residential portion of Linder Village only, or limit residential access to the east side. Change the direction of the stop signs on Bergman. Increase traffic calming measures on Bergman to more than a bob out. Require all crosswalks are constructed with phase 1. Coordinate signaling timing between Cayuse Creek and the collector roads. Get the fire and police report about the fire station access. Do not allow the collector road to taper from 46 to 36 feet. And we need your authority to tell Meridian City to limit access. So I thank you very much, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
Hello, my name is Amber Woolner. I live at 4272 West Bolton Drive, and I'm actually in Foxtail Estates across Chinden on the north side of Paramount. I echo a lot of the same sentiments. My sister is the one who had the son who was run over by a construction truck. But my concern is Bergman. So I exit my neighborhood from Bergman, and right now with the Eagle Marketplace in Fred Meyer, there's several other small businesses and restaurants, and they siphon them out, so they're not allowed to make a left turn unless they go out onto Linder, and I'm looking at the map, not you, sorry. And then in order to make a left turn on Chinden, they have to come out onto Bergman, where I also come out. And right now I see that you're making allowances for Bergman, so it's right in and right out to get into the Linder Village. But that also hinders my ability to, and everybody else's ability, to turn left onto Chinden with the increased traffic that this is going to create. And I just foresee not only terribly long lines to get out onto Chinden, but also very dangerous conditions. Because right now I feel like I'm taking my life into my own hands, just trying to turn left to get my kids to school. And I mean, if we're talking even a 5% increase, what is that, like 400 more cars that I'm trying to battle around? And that's a big concern. And so I feel like these extra outlets and inlets into Linder Village are really going to cause more problems than it's worth. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I'll go ahead and give the developer a chance to rebut. What do you need, about 3 minutes? Okay.
Thank you, Commissioners, Madam President. I don't really have a lot of specific individualized rebuttal on the comments specifically directed to traffic in the neighborhoods. I think we've addressed that already in terms of the overall design of the collector road and the connections of Bergman to the collector road as an intended means, as your staff has also indicated, to perform a traffic calming function. And as I stated before, to the extent that there are additional traffic calming concepts that need to be implemented, we are certainly willing to work with staff on implementation of those, including if those are desired to go along the collector road. There are some trade-offs, of course, whenever you do things like bump outs and the like, in that that would interfere with what was also intended to be a bike path to support bike traffic rather than solely vehicular traffic. But certainly safety is a concern for everybody, and that's something that we would certainly be willing to work together with staff. The comments, I think there were several of them that overall basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, but overall basically said that we just want local residential uses allowed on these streets and not have any access to any of the adjacent commercial spaces. And of course these are public roads for public use, and I don't think it's reasonable to say we can block them off solely for residential uses, and then that becomes an enforcement issue after all. There were a number of comments that said, well, we don't really need these connections through Bergman or Arliss or otherwise to the collector road, because it's easy for us to go out on Linder, or to go, if you're on the east side, to go around on Chinden to access this facility. And yet those kind of comments and sentiments stand in direct contrast to the other comments and sentiments we have that say, well, Linder and Chinden are too busy already, and you can't get anywhere on those streets right now. So, you know, I think pick whichever line you want, but overall there's a balancing. And of course the balancing is the job that you hold, and it's the balance of the impacts of a particular project on transportation needs for the entire county and the entire residential population, certainly with attention to those most directly affected by the local impact. But there's an overall balancing, and we think we have struck that overall balance here with the changes to the development that you now see before you with the configuration of the collector road. And then I'll just close with one final comment on the concept of connection of Arliss to the collector road. Originally that was proposed, and it was very much the opinion of planning and zoning that they liked this option instead. So we've kind of got conflicting direction from the different agencies and instrumentalities that have an input into this project. But this particular configuration with Arliss being connected was, as I've said before, specifically designed as an additional traffic calming device. I understand the concern with funneling, but I think the concern with funneling only becomes a real issue if you buy into the proposition that there's a lot of cut-through traffic which will be generated by the connections of Bergman to the collector road. And as the staff report indicates, someone going a half mile out of their way to make that connection, that just doesn't seem logical. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them, but I would have no further comments at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Mr. Hanson?
Just have one question. I understand the difficulty. You have to have rooftops. People don't build commercial areas and then hope the houses will be built. So the houses get built and then there's stub streets. The question I have is, though, that you have an opportunity here with your development to say we would like a sizable portion of our client base not to drive to this development, but to walk or bike, or to come in their wheelchair. And yet the design looks like the back of the building, the supply areas, the garbage dumps and so forth. Maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like the back side is facing the neighborhood, which isn't terribly inviting except for one little entryway. Have you designed this in a way to maximize people walking and biking from that neighborhood? Because it's sort of self-fulfilling if you say, well, we're going to orient this to the cars out on Chinden and Linder, but come on in the back way, and they're going to say, well, we're going to drive there, whether they drive there through these connections or elsewhere. Is there really a design difference between here, between what you presented here, that actually invites people to reduce the number of car trips?
Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, and you don't know how much, well, I know you do know how much I enjoy saying this. Yes, you are wrong. And I say that, and I'll add right away that the back of the building does not have the garbage compactor location. That's all screened by the back of the building and by a full-height masonry wall. All of those functions were moved to face Linder, and that was done very intentionally and was done at more or less at the direction of City Council and Planning and Zoning to minimize the impact from the commercial operations of Winco, the outside operations, even though I'd hesitate to add that the only real outside operation are the trucks pulling in and mating to the docking bay, which is sealed to the back of the truck. All of the delivery forklifts and the like are all conducted inside of the store. But there are no garbage facilities and the like on the backside of that building. But let me get to your more specific question. Did we design this to have pedestrian access and pedestrian uses? Yes, absolutely. Bear in mind, this is a facility with a full-service grocery store, and most people don't go to a full-service grocery store and carry home 40, 50 pounds of groceries. They're going to drive their car to get there to take to get their groceries. There are, however, many pedestrian accesses, many pedestrian uses, including the building at the center, the three buildings joined together. Just to the left of that, there's a small plaza area. We're talking about that building would perhaps be a library building or an amphitheater or some public use like that. And that whole center plaza then going north from that location is almost entirely walking. The buildings there are live, work, residents above, businesses below. Is there a big parking lot in front of Winco? Absolutely. But most people drive their cars to Winco or any other grocery store to do their grocery shopping. So within the constraints of what this facility is, I think we've designed in about as much pedestrian and bicycle and non-vehicle access as you would logically want for that type of facility. I'd note also, because it sort of relates to your question, Commissioner Hanson, is if you look right where the words say North Linder Road, you'll see a bump out there. We did, we did approach VRT, offer a bus stop there and bus access. VRT said they don't need it, they don't want it at this point. They don't have the budget, we think, to really expand their bus service to make that worthwhile. But we did intentionally design in public transport as well, to the extent that that those agencies are interested in it, and we remain open to do that in the future.
Well, Mr. Howell, I just point out that the white areas, which are presumably the sidewalks and in front of those buildings and front entrances, are mostly facing towards Chinden and Linder. Even that plaza, it looks like it's facing towards Chinden, and yet you want the people to be walking up on the other side, so they'd actually walk around. Just in looking at the design, when you first look at it, it sure looks like it's facing, and you know, the way in which you greet the people coming in indicates whether you're looking to them. You know, Winco's Winco, but all the others are sort of mimicking that. And the one thing we'd love to see is in the design, now we can't tell you how to design it, but in the design, if you can help us with our work to try and reduce the need for car trips that people could otherwise walk to, if there was a library or small business or whatnot. Really think about that, and I would encourage you, you know, there are plenty of design teams in this town who can come up with that, but it sort of defeats the purpose to create these pedestrian access points, and then they're looking at a big tall back end of the building and they still have to go around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commission, you have it before you.
Madam President.
Mr. Goldthorpe.
I think this development is a perfect example of providing infrastructure and projects that will allow for property owners to the opportunity to shop, work, and recreate closer to where they live. Thank you. I also applaud the traffic calming efforts as mentioned by Commissioner Hanson, and I therefore make a motion that the Linder Village subdivision annexation, rezone, and preliminary plat application be approved with the following additional condition, and that be that traffic calming be designed so that the collectors are all scaled down to 25 miles an hour and all local roads to 20 miles an hour. This, excuse me, for a distance of 1/4 mile to the south, southeast, and east of the development boundaries.
Sounds reasonable. I'll second.
Can I?
No, I'm sorry, thank you. Okay, thank you, but Meridian Planning and Zoning has approved the design and the land use. Well, that's fine, okay, thank you.
Could I ask for some clarification? I don't understand where, in your motion, where you're proposing to put the traffic calming. If it's outside the boundaries of this development, I think those are off-site improvements that perhaps couldn't be required, and maybe our legal counsel could speak to that, but I'm confused as to where you are proposing to put the traffic calming.
And I'll modify that by saying the within and without the boundaries of the development.
Well, in that case, I think we need some guidance from our legal counsel because we're limited on what we can require in the way of improvements off-site.
Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, ACHD General Counsel. Commissioner Arnold, you are correct. ACHD does have limitations in terms of off-site improvements. However, the developer did agree that in those situations for some off-site improvements that they would be willing to consider some traffic calming where feasible. And to that extent, I think if the motion reflected that to the extent that there could be some off-site improvements made where feasible, and the developer has the ability to do that within the existing right-of-way, then I think that that would be proper only by his agreement.
Perhaps the motion could be slightly changed to say that the traffic calming on the collectors within the boundaries of the project will be established by the staff, and that any traffic calming outside of the boundaries of this project will be done in cooperation with the developer.
Well, I'm not exactly the most optimistic person about those kinds of discussions resulting in what I'm thinking ought to be necessary. So unless that's essential.
Madam President, Commissioners, Commissioner Goldthorpe, we don't have the authority for those off-site improvements unless it's agreed to at the developer. The developer today explained the difficulty of those off-site improvements, but expressed a willingness to explore those. To the extent that it's feasible, I think that staff and the developer could explore that. I'd also like to note that in terms of the speed limits, that is something that really isn't within our jurisdiction. The minimum speed limit in Meridian is 25, not 20. That's something that the City of Meridian and ACHD can work on, but typically is not a condition that's made and as part of a development approval. That's something that we review and we can take that seriously, but that's a very difficult condition for us to satisfy, especially when we have to make a speed determination by Idaho law and make sure we have those warrants. So I would request that your motion be amended to reflect the same.
I would agree then. Thank you.
Well, I'll second that, understanding that the only way I can approve this is knowing that these traffic calming measures, and we've seen this before, are supported by the developer. The developer has some resources to help fund those so that they happen before in phase one. And I've seen this. We've seen this and a number of times. Developers have offered to do traffic calming and features off-site as part of the negotiations. And I think that is reasonable to do and to expect it in phase one. The other thing is we know exactly what design speed is, and so we know that those collectors are not designed for 25 mile an hour because people comfortably drive in excess of that. So that's why we are having so many requests to redesign roads to bring them in consistent to this posted speed limit, and that's what Commissioner Goldthorpe, I think, is getting at. Let's redesign and impose protections. I think it's really important that that be done in phase one and not leave it up afterwards, after development happens, after cut-through traffic is already zipping along on these roads, for them to come up with and frankly compete. We've got some good examples. I would commend the developer to look at some of the modeling that is being done on Kootenai Street. It's an old street, but people use it as a cut-through, and we are designing and worked with the neighbors to come up with the designs to say, oh, even though the speed limit says 25, people comfortably can drive in excess of that. We're designing it to the speed limit. That's what we need to be doing off-site, and if the developer, I see him nodding his head, will be willing to do that, this can work. We can control connectivity, we can control design speed.
Okay.
And those are the two things I think
So I think
Commissioner
we need to
Goldthorpe's motion
restate the
gets.
motion so that we're all on the same page. And that is to approve, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Mr. Goldthorpe made a motion to approve the Linder Village subdivision annexation, rezone, and preliminary plat as is written in the staff report, with the addition of requiring traffic calming on the collector streets and the surface streets inside the development, and to explore with the developer the additional traffic calming on streets outside of the development area that will impact the development area.
Thank you.
Is that what you?
Yes.
Okay, and does the seconder agree?
Yes, and I'd
Okay,
like to
great.
see
All right,
those
Mr. Hanson,
come
Mr. Hanson.
forward to the commission
Mr.
as they're being
Hanson,
developed.
somebody else needs to get to talk now. Mr. Woods?
Quick point of clarification. On Bergman, is it Bergman as illustrated here, or is it with that little jog?
I think it's with the little jog, because that was included in the staff report.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
With little jog.
yes. I would have, it's what you've asked. Yeah. It's the little jog is in. Okay. Did you want to make a comment?
Well, I am going to support the motion with the understanding that we're not going to try to force the developer to do anything that's outside what we legally can do. But aside from that process, I would like to have our staff take a look at traffic calming that ACHD can put in within Paramount. There were several people who commented about the need for stop signs in certain locations. I'd like for our staff to take a look at that and see if we can put stop signs in locations where it will help calm traffic. There was also a concern raised about vegetation on landscaping on Director, I believe, that limits visibility and line of sight. I think we need to have staff take a look at that and see if there are modifications that need to be made to make that safer along Director for pedestrians to cross.
Excuse me. It's before the commission now, so we're making our decision. And I am going to support the motion. It's interesting. I remember back when all along Chinden, all along Linder, all along all of these roads in Meridian. Meridian was a sleepy little town of 15,000, 20,000 people. This was all farmland. They were growing corn, they were growing mint, whatever. Now it's growing houses, and with that obviously comes a lot of traffic. Not only within the neighborhood, but without the neighborhood. However, this application does provide the connectivity that's needed, that we all say we want, and that everyone wants. Pedestrian, vehicular, and bicycle. And yes, the commercialization of this corner, I think, was something that was anticipated. It may look towards Linder, it may look towards Chinden, it may not look back towards the neighborhood, but I think that the neighborhood is going to be extremely happy to have the connectivity on these roads in order to get there, not only for walking, but also for vehicular. This also sets up the widening of Chinden, which is extremely important to this area. The STARS agreement is going to, we've got an agreement that's going to widen Chinden from 10 Mile to Linder. This is going to take it to Meridian and then hopefully to Locust Grove. And then the state is going to be doing something from Locust Grove to to Eagle. So at some point, Chinden is going to be widened out, and it's going to be not the goat trail that it's turned into with all of the traffic. So I think also, I'd like to just point out, I think a lot of the speeding is coming from within the neighborhood, so perhaps the gentleman that was on the HOA or the advisory committee on the HOA could maybe get with your neighbors and maybe work out a situation where, I don't know if it's more discussion with the neighborhood or whatever, but I really do think that a lot of the traffic, that the speeding is coming from within the neighborhood into the neighborhood, from within, getting out and coming in. But as I said, I'm going to support the application because I think it does create a lot of opportunities for this area. So with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carries. Thank you all for coming. We're going to take like a 5-minute recess. We're going to lose, I think, a couple of people from the commission. Are you going to stay? Or? Well, you can leave. That's fine. There's not a lot on here. So we'll be back in 5 minutes. Have fun.
Yeah, I'm not going to be here till 2 o'clock.
Yeah, well. Who the hell thought
Hey.
Well, or just the size of the property. I didn't want to ask that question. I know it's probably won't just about. Appreciate it. Great.
Where is everybody?
I think unless you guys really need me, I am gonna go back to that.
No, we can wait.
Oh, this was the guy. Robert Spindler, he's with Zions. So I had it wrong.
They want to churn. They want to churn. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and bring us back in session. Next on our agenda is Resolution 2259, Sidecast Sweeper Surplus Declaration. Request for approval. This is a public hearing. I'm going to open the public hearing, and we will hear from our fleet coordinator, Aaron Chestnut.
President Baker, Commissioners, Aaron Chestnut, Fleet Coordinator. Again, Resolution 2249, or 2259, excuse me, for surplus equipment.
Excuse me, can you just ask them to move to one side or the other of the door, because otherwise the noise just comes right in this room.
Is it just the three of us now?
Yes, well, Mr. Woods had to leave for a meeting.
That's right.
And Ms. Arnold is attending the Idaho Taxpayers Association conference. So, sorry, go ahead, Aaron.
Resolution 2259 is finding surplus equipment for certain personal property of the Ada County Highway District is no longer useful or necessary and declaring it surplus. These values are determined in excess of $5,000, authorizing the exchange of this subject personal property for a value at a later date, approval by the Board of Commissioners. The public hearings be held today, Wednesday, December 5th at 12 p.m. here at Adams. This is for Fund 1, 2013 sidecast sweeper with an expected value of $15,000. Staff recommendations that the Commission approve Resolution 2259 declaring that surplus property is listed in Exhibit A is no longer useful or necessary to the district. Stand for any questions.
Any questions? Okay, is there anyone in the audience of one who wishes to testify on this item? Apparently not, so I will close the public hearing, and Commission, you have this before you.
Madam President, I would make a motion that we approve the request for approval, resolution number 2259 concerning the sidecast sweeper surplus declaration.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next up we have, we're going to have a staff report on the next 5 items. Resolution 2265, Resolution 2266, Resolution 2267, Resolution 2268, and Resolution 2269. These are all surplus properties from properties on our VMP project as well as Cole Road. We'll have a staff report from Lori Baird covering all 5 of the properties, but we'll have to have an individual motion. These are all public hearings, so I'll go ahead and open all the public hearings right now, and we will hear from Ms. Baird.
Thank you. President Baker, Commissioners, louder. My name is Lori. I'm with the Right-of-Way Department. Today is the time, date, place that was advertised in the Idaho Statesman that we'd hold a public hearing. The public hearing is to allow anybody to come forward to testify as to why we should not sell or dispose of the 5 properties we're bringing today. All 5 of these properties were purchased for projects that are now completed, and we no longer need the remainder of any of them. The first one is 4017 South State Street. This is 4019 South State Street, 3508 State Street, and 1005 Stilson, and then this is the one off of Cole and Lake Hazel project. Here are the current appraised values on all 5 of them. Before we can move forward with declaring these surplus and disposing of them, we are required to hold a public hearing.
Can you just go back to the
Yes.
values?
To what one?
That was it. I just wanted to, thank you.
Okay. To allow anyone to appear to, they let us know if we should not dispose of them. If no one comes forward today to testify, the commission can then adopt the resolutions to declare them to be surplus properties and to establish the procedures for the sale. Before we can move forward to sell them, we are first required to offer them to any adjoining property owners. If they choose not to purchase the properties, then we would move forward with a public sale. We would propose that it is done by sealed bids, and the minimum bid value would not be less than the appraised value. The highest bidder would be required to pay 10% down the day of and by 4:30, and the highest bidder would be required also to close within 90 days. Staff recommends that the commission adopts all 5 resolutions and declare them all to be surplus properties and to establish the procedures for the sales.
Are there any questions of staff? Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to testify on any of these resolutions? Sure, come on up, give your name and address for the record, and tell us what property you're interested in. And
my name is Ryan Boyce. I live at 4014 West Garnet Street. The property right behind mine is, I believe,
19?
18 or 19.
19? 4019?
Could be,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
I'm just concerned that that could be sold to, say, a convenience store, gas station, and that there is an apartment building to one side and all my bedroom windows out to the back. And that would add light pollution, noise pollution, crime. Also, currently, there's a big smoke across the street, and that leads to a exodus from Veterans Park's homeless community to buy their hooch, and the same goes for the gas station across from Veterans Park, the Stinker, and I don't want that near my home.
Well,
is there any control over who gets to purchase that piece of land?
Madam President, Commissioners, right now the adjoining property owners have first rights to it, and the gentleman adjoining to it is interested.
What does he?
The auto body shop.
Okay.
Okay.
Perfect.
So he just wants to expand his lot.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Well, that also clears out our audience. So I'm going to close the public hearing, And commission, we have to do these one by one. So we need a motion on resolution 2265.
So, Madam Chair, I'm just going to make a comment, and I have no problem voting for these. Just as you probably know, I opposed the taking or purchasing of these properties, the first four resolutions, because I didn't believe they were in the public interest, and I opposed the project that was done. But that doesn't necessarily mean we shouldn't dispose of them now, because holding on to them is also not in the public interest. So I would therefore move that we adopt Resolution 2265.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Madam President, I'd also make a motion that we adopt resolution number 2266.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
I move to adopt Resolution 2267.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
And Madam President, I move to adopt resolution number 2268.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries.
Move to adopt Resolution 2269.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Okay, that concludes our regular agenda. There's no one here to give us public communications, so meeting adjourned.